Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. I'm delighted to say that on today's episode, I've got a very, very special guest. Before I introduce him, let me just explain to you a little bit about what we're going to be doing. Slightly different format. We are going to have a debate around a number of topics. We're going to have some discussion around a number of topics that are, I think, quite popular topics within the Arsenal fan base at the moment. My guest, I'm delighted to say, is Adam Keys from the Arsenal Therapy podcast. Adam, how you doing, first of all?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. Sorry, I was on mute there. So
All good.
massive thank you. I'm really pleased to be back on the show. And yeah, how are you doing?
I'm all good, mate. I'm all good. As I keep saying on the pod, I'm trying to adapt to life as a father of three. It is very different. There's certain sort of phases of parenthood that I felt that I'd come through and that they were behind me. And now I have to go back to the beginning. So it's been a little bit tricky, but we're all good. And I think the international break actually has come at a pretty decent time for me, to be fair. So I'll take it this time around. What we're going to do on today's pod, just to let the listeners know, is that I've asked Adam to come up with kind of 3 early season opinions. I've got some of my own as well. And we are going to work our way through them. We're going to discuss them. We'd like to get you guys' input in the chat box as well. So keep your thoughts coming. And yeah, it's going to be fun, I think, because like there was a comment really early on in the chat from someone who said that, you know, based on the title of the episode, that we've kind of gone, or that okay, I don't know what happened there. But anyway, there was some chat about how I've maybe gone down the slightly negative route based on the game against Liverpool last weekend. And I just want to say that that's not my intention at all. I'm not a negative Arsenal fan. I never have been. But I think it was fair to question the playing style. I think it was fair to question whether we should have gone for it. I think it was fair to question whether or not the approach at Anfield was the best approach or the right approach if you want to end the season as Premier League champions. I want to get your take on that first of all, Adam, because I guess the first topic, which I think we have to discuss today, just because of how big a debate and discussion it is at the moment in the fan base, is does Mikel Arteta need to be braver? What do you make of that, and what have you made of the fallout from the game against Liverpool?
Um, Firstly, just on the fallout, I think the fallout's been overstated. I think there's been an overreaction because it's Anfield. Liverpool are champions. We forget that Liverpool have went out and had one of the best windows we've ever seen. It kind of feels like Real Madrid 2009 when they bought Ronaldo, Kaká, that kind of level of talent. They've gone out and bought the best 9 in the world. They've also added Ekatike, who was wanted by a host of other top clubs. Florian Wirtz, Man City and Real Madrid were the other 2 clubs chasing him, Bayern Munich as well. So you look at the talent on show, it was also Anfield. They are full of confidence at the minute. They had a big win against Newcastle. However, I do agree with the point that Arteta needed to be a bit braver. I put out a show straight after the game, and that was very similar. My title was Arteta needed to be braver. Unlike many, I think he got the starting 11 right. I think the first half was excellent. I think there was a point at halftime when Martinelli wasn't working, and Liverpool made the change. And I think the fact that Szoboszlai went in and was given him more freedom and was allowed to play in midfield a bit more, that's a really damning testament to Martinelli right now. That showed that they had a winger that doesn't track back massively, and they had a midfielder prepared to go into midfield and didn't feel troubled by Martinelli. For me, Eze should have come on at half time. I don't know how much fitness Odegaard had. We don't know the extent of that shoulder injury, how many painkillers that he's playing through. So on that one, I'm prepared to let it go. However, on 60 minutes, it was very clear that Mourinho was getting very tired. He worked very hard. I actually thought he had a good game, but he had a good game up until 55, 60 minutes. And then it was time for the change. Curtis Jones comes on, and suddenly the energy in Anfield lifted. He was finding space in the pockets. Zubimendi and Rice were, Zubimendi especially was maybe tiring a bit, and he went through a phase for probably 10 or 15 minutes where he looked slightly leggier. And I think that was the point where Arteta needed to freshen things up. And when Odegaard and Eze came on, it did lift for a few minutes. We saw Eze and Odegaard link at the edge of the box. I thought it was a great chance for Gyökeres. He just was flat-footed. These moments matter in games, and I think that bravery is something that we shouldn't be scared of saying. I'm like you, I'm an extremely positive Arsenal fan. If I say anything negative, suddenly I get accused of all sorts. But I look at the game and think that's how I would have done it. I would have kept it tight for the first hour at Anfield because Liverpool have conceded all their goals late. We were also without some of our key players, but I think that bravery needed to come in at halftime. Go and make the change. As he's fit, he's sharp. He's already played Liverpool once this season. When your left winger who knows the system isn't working, go and bring your star new player on. It lifts the team, it lifts the fans, and it shows that you're not scared to go for it. But all in all, I think despite Slot being heavily praised for the change that he made with Szoboszlai being allowed to go into midfield and then bringing on Curtis Jones, Liverpool still weren't creating much. The energy raised, and it was still that free kick that decided the game. And Arsenal had a free kick from Rice in a similar position. He put it over the bar. We had the Eze chance. You're talking about a game of such fine margins, but those fine margins can be elevated with that bit more bravery.
Do you know what I found really interesting about this whole debate in the kind of aftermath of Sunday's game was that the way that the narrative was spun into, well, this is what Arsenal always do every time they go to one of the biggest sides away from home. The truth is, Adam, that we've come away from many of those games saying that was a really solid, streetwise, and in the end, good performance. And yes, we didn't have enough in the tank in the end to go and win it. But we were competitive, and we haven't been competitive in those types of fixtures and at those types of grounds for such a long time. So it's funny to me how after this game, the narrative was kind of spun into something that it hasn't been previously, but people were expected to believe that it had been that. So, for instance, I remember that draw we got up at Manchester City when we went down to 10 men, and it was 2-2 in the end, wasn't it? Where they scored 97th, 98th minute, and we were all like, oh my god, like, you know, we're disappointed that we didn't get all 3 points, but man, what a brave defensive display that was from the 10 men of Arsenal. They were just phenomenal. Yet the media narrative seems to be that we were annoyed then, which we weren't. I don't remember being annoyed then. That we were annoyed the last time we went to Anfield and got something, which again, I don't remember feeling that way. I think like, and people have kind of fallen into that trap. And I would say this to Arsenal fans, like, don't you remember how you felt at the time yourself? Do you have to be told how you felt by Gary Neville or by Jamie Carragher? Like, come on. Like, we've taken a big step towards being competitive. And have we won as many of those games on the road as we'd have liked? No. But, you know, last year we didn't lose to Liverpool. Liverpool didn't beat us, yet became champions, which shows and highlights that actually you don't need to beat the other team to win the league, because, you know, that's not how it panned out that time. We beat Manchester City 5-0, didn't we, at home? Like, people have forgotten all of this stuff, and it annoys me that they fall into the trap of biting at what someone like Jamie Carragher or Gary Neville has to say. I, like you, think we could have been braver. I, like you, think that we needed to make the change ahead of Liverpool. We needed to be proactive rather than reactive. And if we did, I think it would have been us that were in the ascendancy around about 60, 65 minutes rather than Liverpool. So that was my criticism. But we're 4 or 5 days after the fact. And I think now it's time to maybe have a wider debate about our approach if we want to have that, which is what we're doing now. But I don't think we should still be angry about it. Like, come on, man. Like, there's, you know, you got to move on. You just got to move on.
Yeah, 100%. For me, a big thing is the narrative that's being created. You mentioned Neville and Carragher, the big game thing. Everyone remembers how we finished the 22-23 season. We went out and we went hell for leather against Man City, and we went at them. We tried to chase them down, hunt every ball. They beat us 4-1. 5 minutes into that game, Man City went out in a much more defensive approach, pinged the ball over the top. Suddenly we're 1-0 down. Then the next minute we're 2-0 down. You look at the season before, we went to Tottenham needing essentially a draw to finish top 4. And we thought we're going to go out and show them that we're a better team than them. And we went out and they beat us 3-0. Rob Holding gets sent off. So these streetwise performances weren't a thing until kind of the beginning of the 23-24 season. And that season, you mentioned that Man City, Liverpool didn't beat us last season. The season before, we took 4 of 6 points against Man City. They got 1 point against us, and they finished with 91 points and won the league. So this narrative that you have to go to the title rival and win to win the league is nonsense. And I would love to see how often that Ferguson's teams actually went to a rival and won. Because I don't remember them beating us loads at Highbury during those years. I remember being beaten at Old Trafford a lot, especially that 6-1 defeat in 2001. But I find this narrative very strange. I think that Arsenal are in a position where we are street smart. We go to a lot of games. And again, you look at Liverpool last season. We went out at Anfield and really took the game to them. And again, the first 10 minutes, brilliant. They hit us with 2 quick goals. Then we came back into it. You look at City away, that 2-2 draw. First half, we were bossing them until Trossard got sent off. And again, I think in this game, there were big moments where we were really, really in control of the game. And I think that's why at halftime that change mattered, because they were unsettled. Anfield was silent. I haven't heard Anfield that quiet with us playing them for a long time. And the only cry you could hear was them singing champions every now and again. And that was a reminder from the crowd. We're the team that's meant to be in charge here. So for me, the narrative changed the minute that goal went in. But I think a lot of people had that narrative preset before the result ever came about. So I also think had we have won that game by a narrow margin, it would have been Liverpool went to win the game and Arsenal snatched the result, when actually, as I said, it was one incredible free kick that's decided the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just having a look because I did come across this the other day. Only one of the last 12 Premier League winners, apparently, and that was City in the 22-23 season, won away to their nearest rivals in a title-winning campaign. 6 of the last 12 Premier League winners lost away to the team that finished second that season. So the games between the top two, they do have some significance if you play them in March, April, May, maybe, but they're not as significant at this stage in the season. And we've got to acknowledge that and understand that. Adam, let's go on to one of your opinions that you brought to the table. I thought this was really interesting. You mentioned Arsenal in the transition and what your take is on Arsenal in the transition. Just let people know what your view is and we'll have a little discussion about it.
Well, I think essentially it's Arsenal are poor on transition. I saw TM Talks Ball, who does a great show, had a phrase, and it was the ghost of Old Trafford transitions, and it carried through to Anfield. And he highlighted a lot of the transition opportunities that we haven't followed through on. And I think there's a couple of sides to this. The first is that we want to play on the transition more. We've got more runners. And if you look at the team that we played, it was 3 straight line runners. And I don't remember Arsenal playing that kind of system for a long time. Madueke was the one that was the most effective. He got the ball, he went at Gyökeres. It didn't always work in the end, but he was pushing Gyökeres right back and causing problems. The issue that I've got with Arsenal on transition right now is we blame tactics for everything. And I think there is an element that, yes, tactics have maybe reduced some of the individual kind of decision making, but at the same time, there's clearly a desire to play on the transition, release the ball quicker. And sometimes we delay that pass by that second, and that second is a huge second in football. Or we overhit the pass, or we choose the wrong pass. And I think the more we start playing this way, the more we will start seeing those results come to fruition. The other thing I would say is our front three, our front four with Odegaard has been changed a lot in just 3 games. We've been to Old Trafford, we battered Leeds at home in second gear, and then we've been to Anfield. The 2 away games are very difficult to gauge where the team's at, because you don't play a normal game on those grounds. You dig in, you try and get a result. And I think we're being judged on fluidity, but against the top teams. I'm also seeing Liverpool have issues. I'm seeing Chelsea have issues. I think there's a big part of the issues are coming down to fluidity. But on transition, it's an area that has bugged us for a long time. I've felt this for 2 or 3 years, even in 23-24, when we were smashing goals in and beating teams 4 and 5-1. I felt that we didn't always release the ball right. And I thought a big part of that was the runners that we had. But actually, I think that's now changing and we're starting to see more. We saw Zubimendi ping the ball out first time to Madueke. These things should improve us. But ultimately, I think stylistic changes take time and new players take time to settle.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think, the way that we're trying to play is visibly different. The way that Zubimendi moves the ball through the lines, that little bit quicker than Thomas Partey, I think is visibly very, very different. I don't know that I trust Zubimendi as much defensively as I trusted Thomas Partey. And I said this prior to him arriving at Arsenal. I was a little bit worried about how he'd cope with the physical side of the game. And I do feel like, and feel free to jump in if you think I'm wrong here, I do feel like in the games at Old Trafford and at Anfield, and as you mentioned, they are very different games to 99% of the other games that you'll play. I did feel that he was maybe so overly focused on making sure that he kept up with the game physically that maybe we didn't get the best out of him in terms of in possession. I thought at Old Trafford, United did a great job of bypassing our midfield, and they made Martin Zubimendi and Declan Rice bystanders for most of the game. But I felt at Anfield, I wanted to see Zubimendi just get on the ball and dictate a little bit more because we had a decent amount of possession. And I felt like maybe he was a little bit risk averse, a little bit worried about being caught out physically, which is understandable. New league, new style, new team, all of that stuff needs to be factored in. But I think you can see, despite all of that, that he wants to work the ball forward nice and early. And we need to create those 1v1 situations. And like, we can talk about Arteta all day and we can talk about tactics. I want to see our players figure things out. And my worry about this Arsenal team at times is that we're so tactically drilled and at times rigid that we've taken away, as you touched on in the last point, the kind of freedom of expression. The player's ability to go, for instance, at Anfield the other day, Noni Madueke has got Milos Kerkez on toast. Get the ball to him early every single time. Let him get it. Let him take it on. And obviously having an option like that on both sides will make the world of difference because it means we'll have variety to our game. Whereas at the moment, as you also touched on, I feel like when you work the ball out to Gabriel Martinelli, teams are quite comfortable that if they show him down the right path and send him down the channel they want to send him down, most of the time it's not going to come to anything. It's not going to amount to anything and there isn't going to be any danger. But I just feel like sometimes we're so well drilled, and that is a good thing in one sense, Adam, because it means that defensively we're one of the meanest in the business. But it has, for me, just taken away that little bit of onus on decision making from the players. And I do feel like sometimes you got to recognize things yourself as a footballer. If you're Martin Zubimendi, you've worked it out to Madueke once, twice. He's roasted Kerkez. Do it again and again and again until Liverpool figure it out, and then you got to find a different solution. But I just feel like you're absolutely right. You can see we're trying to be more transitional, but it's not really clicking at the moment, is it?
Yeah, and I think, again, part of that comes with understanding. And we have to remember Zubimendi is new. To be honest, after the Liverpool game, I feel more confident that Zubimendi can handle any opposition because Liverpool are so powerful. They move the ball so quickly. And whilst I didn't feel that he dominated the game in any way, I felt that he was comfortable in there. And that's a big sign for me. I look at the Leeds game and he was just unplayable in that game. And the other thing I would say is I want Zubimendi getting more touches. I think we take too many touches between our centre backs. And if you look at Saliba, there's games where he has over 100 touches. Sometimes rather than passing it back to Gabriel, just give it into your six and trust them to play. Let them progress the ball early. And we know Saliba's a great ball progressor, but not having him at Anfield, I think definitely had an impact. I think that connection was gone. And then with regards to connections, I think when you go up the pitch and you look at getting the ball out to Madueke quicker, for example, Madueke's at 10 minutes on the right wing for Arsenal. They came when we were 3-0 up at Leeds. We are so used to playing Saka out that side. Their movements are completely different. And I think these things will improve, but when you've got a team that are so tactically drilled, I think that has a bigger impact. Whereas if you put one of those players into an Arsene Wenger team, players were just free to express themselves. And there's pros and cons to that. As time went on and other teams became more tactically drilled, we were being run through out the park. And it meant that whilst some of our attacking football could be beautiful, we were going backwards. We're not going backwards anymore. And I just think that there comes a point where we have to trust the defensive structure that we've got. We trust the likes of Declan Rice to get us out of trouble in midfield as well, and let those attackers go and play. And I think that Mikel Arteta has been trusted with the funds this year. He's been given the players that he wants. He's been given the attack in depth and quality. And it's on him now to go and deliver. I don't think, I hate the phrase no excuses. I think it's often delivered without context. But one thing I would say is when you've got that volume of quality and attack, adding on top of what you've already got, you have to go and play the football and score the goals and create the chances to win games. And I don't have any worries now that we're going to do that. I think we're starting to see signs that we want to play differently, and we're not going to go to Anfield again until next year. So that's a big positive. Having that game and Old Trafford out of the way will allow us to really kick on now.
And also, just responding to a comment I've just seen in the chat, Martin Brooks said, Roy Keane said it best when he said Arsenal have had yet another net spend nightmare. I hate this net spend nonsense, right? Why is it all of a sudden that the transfer spend is being depicted as net spend? In the past, it would have been how much has X club spent on transfers this summer in terms of incomings, and that will be it. And the truth is, Liverpool might have brought in some money this summer, but they've spent more than double we did. They've spent over £420 million in one window from a position of strength. Now, fair play to them, man. Good luck. If you can do it, no problem. Go out and do it. I'm not sitting here saying that Liverpool are like Man City or that they should be investigated or anything like that. I'm not suggesting that for a second. My point here is that it's very easy to say Arsenal spent X amount, but look at what the teams around us are spending. Look at what Manchester City did in January and then this summer. Look at what Liverpool have done this summer from a position of strength. You've got to understand that. And again, not fall into these traps of becoming anti your own club because of some narrative that is clearly being spun to put forward a certain point of view and to argue the case of certain football clubs. Like that's what really winds me up. Like our own fans fall into that trap over and over and over again. Okay, one of my points that I want to put forward to you, Adam, and this is something that I wasn't sure about, I got to say, going into this season. But my point now is that as long as he can stay fit, Riccardo Calafiori is our new left back. What do you make of that?
100%. I'm a huge Calafiori fan. I have been following him for a long time. I think it was Ben Mattinson first put me on to him when he was at Bologna, and he is just such an incredible player. He's someone that I think could easily play for Real Madrid. When you watch him in the ground, you can't take your eyes off him. He's got an aura about him where he floats around the pitch. I think that him as a ball progressor, him as a Roman player, he's someone that he can work that full left side. And I think the way he played against Salah answered a lot of his defensive questions. The big question in the game was, do you play Timber at left back? And I think if Ben White was fit, there's a good chance Timber would have played left back. But actually, Calafiori is great in the air. He is actually a very, very strong tackler and interceptor. The thing with him is he does like to play on the front foot. Against Salah, he played on the front foot at times in the first half, but when the game changed, he recognized the changes in the game and he stuck to Salah and made sure he couldn't do anything. And I think one of the moments, Salah got the cross in, but that kind of Trivela cross that he played that Raya kind of popped up over the defender and caught, that was a big moment because that showed Salah didn't believe that he could go past him. And whilst he got an incredible ball in, it went straight to the keeper. And that was one of the few moments that Salah really caused problems. He had the shot that Rice cut out, but beyond that, Calafiori kept Salah completely quiet. And then you look at his impact in the other games. You look at how he can drift up the pitch, passing the ball with the outside of his left, giving it with his right, round the corner. There's just so many great things in his game. And I think with Nketiah coming in, we've now got another fullback that can play in a somewhat similar way, but it's more of a direct, straight line runner than Calafiori. And I think Arsenal are saying, maybe this is time for Miles to move into midfield a bit. So I think I completely agree with this. And I also would go further and say, if Calafiori stays fit, he's one of the players that can really catapult you towards a title because he's got the Trent factor. You can't pick him up. You can't mark a fullback out of a game, and he can do magic things for Arsenal.
He brings chaos, doesn't he? He brings chaos
Yeah.
in an attacking sense. I think we recognized that from the very beginning. I remember covering the PSG game at home in the Champions League last season, not the knockout stage one, not the semi-final, but the league phase game. And I remember going into the press conference after the game and saying to Mikel Arteta, what was your instruction to Riccardo Calafiori? Because while he was playing at left back on paper, there were times where he was popping up in the 10 role. And I kept seeing that in the game. It kept catching my eye. And I remember asking him, and he said something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing, obviously, because I can't remember the quote word for word, but he said something along the lines of, he goes where he wants, he goes where he feels. And that's one of the special things about him. I also remember coming away from that game, though, and thinking defensively, I've got some questions, because in the biggest of games against the best opposition, you're going to need to be a little bit more structured. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said the most encouraging thing about Calafiori's performance at Anfield was not that he got into midfield and got on the ball, was not that, you know, he was galloping up and down that left-hand side the way he does. It was that he recognized when it was the right time to just sit, to plug a hole. The fact that he respected what Mo Salah is capable of and understood that his game needed to be adjusted accordingly for the game state at that point. That, for me, was the most encouraging sign of what Riccardo Calafiori can be, I would say, since he's joined Arsenal. Now, the worry is the fitness. And that's why I prefaced what I said with, if he stays fit, he's our left back, because that is still a concern for me. And he's on international duty at the moment. And I've got to be honest, I'm waking up in the middle of the night with cold
Don't
sweats
say it, Harry.
to check that he's okay. You know, that's where we're at with Riccardo Calafiori. But just as a kind of side point before we move on to the next topic, what does that mean for Miles Lewis-Skelly? I know you said that you think maybe Arsenal are now considering him as a midfield player. How does he deal with this? Because he's gone from breaking into the side, nailing down the position, making it his own, being the talk of the town. It must be quite difficult for a young man to kind of now roll that back and understand that, you know, he's still young enough to be okay and not worry about game time yet. But obviously, when you've had a taste of it, it's quite difficult to go backwards, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I think I always feel differently to a lot of people about this stuff, in that I kind of think that your moments will come, and when they come, you have to grab them. Miles did it last season. We know Calafiori's injury record's not great, and I think I've just accepted that whilst we've just been talking about if he can stay fit, he's going to have probably 2 or 3 injuries this year. I think accepting that has made it a bit easier. But I think there's now Hincapié in there and Miles. And then I think Miles also has the option to play in midfield, both as a 6 or an 8. So the way I see it is, when your moment comes, you have to grab it. And there's now so many games that the minutes are there. And I don't see it being a problem for someone of Miles Lewis-Skelly's quality. I think Arteta's also showing huge trust in him. So he knows that he's got the backing of the manager. He's got his own personal backing. He believes so strongly in himself. So I think when you're a good player, roles will become apparent. As the season goes on, opportunities arise, and it's down to players to show themselves to be available for that, show themselves to be equipped to deal with whatever comes their way. And I think Miles is fine.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Adam, let's go on to one more of your points as well. While we've got time, let's work our way through as many as we can. You made a point about the size of the squad. Now, I've been having this debate with some of our listeners over the course of probably the last few weeks, when we've been talking about the transfer window, saying we needed one more ahead of the Eze signing. And then obviously this debate came to the fore again when it emerged that Arsenal were going to sign Hincapié from Bayer Leverkusen. What do you make of the fact that we now have a bigger squad? Does this bring problems, and how do you navigate those problems? Because I got the feeling from your message that was kind of the route you were going down here.
I think it can bring problems, but it's on Arteta to bring solutions. And that's the route I would go down. So I think that one of the points I was making is, in pre-season, when you've got a squad of 24, 25 players, those minutes have to be shared. That's a lot of players to get fit very quickly. You are talking 4 or 5 games in pre-season. That's not a lot of time to get people up to speed physically, but also get them technically and get them sharp and get them integrated. We've also brought in 8 players. Arsene Wenger used to always say, once you go past 4 or 5, that it is a big challenge to integrate them all. Because remember, it's not just on the pitch, there's chemistry off the pitch. These lads have to get to know each other. Everyone speaks different levels of English as well. So these things are learned. But I would say that it's had an impact on our early games. It's something I actually think Liverpool have had a bit of an issue as well, getting everyone fully up to speed. But with Arsenal, I think this is a new challenge. We've got so much quality. I actually think that the outgoings of the window have been very poor. I'm not going to shy away from that. And I think whilst we got a few players out on loan on deadline day, and we got in my opinion, below average fee for Kivior, there's still a lot of attackers in that squad. I don't understand the decision to give Trossard the pay rise. I think he was someone that needed to move on. Firstly, to bring someone in. We managed to bring that person in without moving him on. But I worried about squad size, the number of minutes available. We've now got so many attacking players that I do wonder, is there too much depth there? I assume that Gabriel Jesus will go in January. He'll probably go on loan somewhere, with Arsenal covering a lot of his wages. But Martinelli's a player that I think Arsenal probably would have sold if an offer came in. So I think that the issue we've got right now with it being a huge squad is that it takes time to get everyone integrated and fit. And then you add in the fact that we've got 4 injuries very early on to 4 of our best players. That's had an impact. So whilst we've had the solutions, I think everyone saw a big squad. You've got the players, no excuses, go out and play. Actually, a lot of those players were making their first appearances for Arsenal. They were just coming off the bench. They were coming into new positions. There's all these understandings. But that's on Mikel Arteta. He wanted the bigger squad. He wanted the depth. He knew and recognized from last season that we had an issue. So, I mean, yes, the problems can be created, but at the same time, this is a good problem to have. And it's a challenge for Arteta. And I think having that level of attack and depth and quality, because it's not just depth, it's quality. That's most managers' dreams. And I think we have to go out and get a solution. But what are your thoughts on this? Because I'm really intrigued. It was something I kind of thought of over the last few days.
Yeah, I understand why people worry about how you give everybody the minutes they need, how you keep everybody happy, how you keep everybody sharp so that when they are called upon, they are ready to come in and impact the team. You've got some players that come in out from the cold and they're brilliant. And you've got others that need time to warm up, that need time to find a rhythm. A great example is Leandro Trossard. I think throughout his Arsenal career, he's always been absolutely fine coming off the bench in a game and having an impact that way. But then you look at someone like maybe Jakub Kivior, who whenever you brought him off the bench or whenever he came in for the odd game looked a little bit shaky. But once you gave him a run of games like we did last season, out of necessity more than anything else, he was fine. So I think there's different types of players, and it's not always going to work the same for everybody. But I think if you take this back to like the club's hierarchy, if you're the owner of the football club, you've got a manager there that for the last 2-3 years has at various points made the point that his squad is not as big as some of the others. Yet you're expecting him to compete on multiple fronts. I would argue that it's why people feel, and I know we made the semi-finals of the League Cup last season, but it's why people feel that maybe the domestic competitions have taken a bit of a backseat under Mikel Arteta recently. Domestic cups, that is. Obviously, it's been about the Premier League and it's been about going far in the Champions League. And listen, I'm not knocking it. We've challenged for the Premier League and we've got to a Champions League semi-final, something Arsenal hadn't managed for, the best part of however many years, going back to 2008, was it? So, you're going back a long, long way. Was it 2008 or 2012?
2009,
I can't remember.
I think.
But either one, it doesn't matter. The point still stands. It's something that we hadn't done as a football club in a long, long time.
Mm.
I think if you're the ownership, what you do is you sit down with your manager, you listen to your manager, and he tells you, this is a problem, that's a problem, that's a problem. And your job as an owner is to A, equip him with everything that he needs, but B, to remove the excuses. to remove the excuses that your manager might have come the end of the season if things don't go his way or he doesn't achieve what it is that he set out to achieve. Make no mistake about it. I've read some reports over the last few days, which I don't think are accurate necessarily, and they haven't been sourced particularly well. But there are some things, I'm sure you've seen them, Adam, floating around on Twitter where it says Josh Kroenke sat down with Mikel Arteta and said, now's the time to deliver, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I don't know who that's come from or whatever, but it did get me thinking. It did get me thinking about the club's position here. You cannot keep investing money into a football team if you are not getting the rewards. There will come a point where any ownership, okay, will go, hold on a minute. I don't know that I can give you as a manager specifically any more money to work with because I've pumped hundreds upon hundreds, going into the billions of pounds into you and your team and your project, and we still haven't won. Now, I know there's no guarantees in football, but I do think that if you're an ownership, you want to remove all the excuses. And one of the big excuses that we've had in recent years, some will call them excuses, some will call it reasons. We have not been able to maintain our level throughout the duration of a campaign because the squad has been on its knees at points. Now, I think there are other elements to this and there are other facets to this, right? So have we overworked players at times? Did we rotate as much as we could have rotated? And you could make arguments that we've got that from a management perspective wrong. And that has contributed to the situation that we found ourselves in and contributed to the squad essentially getting to a point where you got, like last season, 3-4 players going down with hamstring injuries and needing surgery. But I think if you're Mikel Arteta, this is what you want. This is what you've been crying out for. This is what every manager dreams of. And as you say, it is absolutely on him to now find that balance. Now, where I'm a little bit maybe worried about this is that this is not something he as a manager has had to deal with before. Okay, it's very much been, I've got a core group of 14, 15 players. That's who I'm going to use. Everybody else is kind of a bit part. I'll try and keep them as engaged as possible, but knowing that, they're not really a part of my core. He can't allow that to happen now because there's too many good players at the football club. And we also are getting into a time and a territory, I believe, where we actually need to start being able to sell for profit, selling well, or at least selling to make our money back. And you're not going to do that if you create, like you've seen at Man United and Chelsea, bomb squads, essentially, where you're leaving people out and leaving them out in the cold. So you need to keep everyone engaged. You need to have everyone involved. You need to keep people stock high from a club perspective in terms of what those assets then look like going into future transfer windows. But you've also got to make sure the team's competitive and make sure the team's at the best level it can be. That will mean at times rolling the dice. That will mean going away somewhere in the FA Cup and making some changes. And you might not feel 100% comfortable doing that as a manager because you want to win, but you have to be able to do that. And this is where I'm intrigued now. How is Mikel Arteta, who is still a new manager, who's still learning, how is he going to manage that? Where do you come down on this? Are you more on the, I think he's going to nail it and this is what he needs side, or are you more on the side of a little bit of caution because it's not something he's done before, really?
I think last season has showed him that he has to. I'm kind of the opinion that until it happens, we can't really say. It's the same with, can Mikel Arteta get us over the line? I believe he can, but until it happens, we can't say with authority that he definitely is the man to do that. And I think it's the same with squad rotation. We've seen Arteta rotate to a degree. I think in the second half of the 23-24 season, he actually did quite a good job. He was getting Saka off at half time in games and so on. And I think, again, I would like to see Arsenal starting games faster. And I think this has an impact in terms of how we use players. If we start faster and we're going 2-0 up, 3-0 up in the first half, you can get a Saka off at half time and put Madueke on. You can take Eze on and put your Martinelli or your Trossard or whoever on in these games. It keeps the squad moving. It keeps everyone fresh. And I think that has an impact. I think the longer games go on and you're seeking a winner late into games, the less likely Mikel is to change it because he is a manager that showed that he does trust his best players. And I think most managers do. PSG actually rotated very, very little last season. But to the point that you've been making, we now have a huge squad. And it's on Mikel to make a solution here and find ways to use these players, because I think you nailed it with KSE. In my opinion, if Arsenal finished the window with what we had before Eze, that's a sign that we want to compete, but we're also making sure that we finish top four. We're guaranteeing our Champions League places. But KSE have gone out and bought Eze without us selling anyone, and then added Nketiah with only a Kiwior seal. That to me is them really kneeling their flag to the mast and saying, go out, we're ready to win trophies now. We are very, very serious about winning. And to me, that's something that we shouldn't be scared to say. We want to win trophies. I think up until now, there has been a bit of, do we have a deep enough squad? Injuries have had an impact. But I think now is the time. Arsene Wenger used to go out with a bang average side, started the season and tell us all that we were going to win the title. And you know what? I believed him every year. So I think we're now at the point where I've never seen an Arsenal squad this strong. I actually think this squad is stronger than the Invincibles. The difference is we don't have a Thierry Henry. But I look at it across the board, and we had Pascal Segan coming in at the back during the Invincibles era. We had a 35, 36-year-old Martin Keown, maybe even older, as our backup centre-backs. You look at who we've got now in defence. They're international footballers in the prime of their careers. Same in midfield. Again, we had an aging Ray Parlour, who was brilliant at that time. But now we're talking about prime age, like international footballers right across the board. And we've got two in every position. And sometimes we've got three. So this is the time to go and find solutions and go and make sure that we're winning trophies.
Yeah, for sure. And I know people keep joking about, the phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. This is the phase in Mikel Arteta's management career where he needs to now adapt and develop a new skill, which is the art of juggling a bigger squad, a talented squad, a squad full of people that desperately want to play, and maintaining that harmony within the group while, breeding that kind of camaraderie that you need and all the rest of it. Like, yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting to see how it goes. I know people always mock Mikel Arteta about some of the phrases he uses. Like, for example, let me just clear this up. The whole trust the process thing, that didn't come from Mikel Arteta, by the way. He didn't make that up. Like, it winds me up when people say that. But anyway, I'm getting drawn into the nonsense side of things. Adam, I think we'll leave it there, mate. Some really, really good discussion points. Really, really enjoyed this, and hopefully we can do it again soon. I think it was a really, really good chat. Let people know how they can follow your excellent show, where they can find it, what you've got coming up next, because it is really brilliant. I've really enjoyed your content of late, mate. So keep it up, and let people know how they can get in touch with it. The link is in the description, but tell people about it.
Yeah, well, big thanks for having me on. As I've said before, I've been following this show for years, so it's a big pleasure to be on it. You can find me on YouTube at Arsenal Therapy. So that's the main thing I'm doing now. It's a show, it's a tactics breakdown show. I do have special guests on. I hope to have you back on soon, Harry. The next show that's coming out will be this week. I've just done a show with Elliot Smith. I've got another show coming up next week with Will Balsam, who's an academy expert. And I've just done some stuff on Eze and Madueke. So go and check it out. It's on YouTube at Arsenal Therapy. We do have an audio podcast as well that isn't as active at the minute. And then you can find me on X at AdamKeys_. So yeah, and thanks again for having me.
No, thanks for joining me, mate. I really, really do appreciate it. I got a bite at this. I'm sorry. I shouldn't. Rumble says, yes, he did. He said, trust the process after the FA Cup, mate. Don't lie, Harry. I'm not saying he didn't say it. I'm saying he didn't make it up. He is not the guy that coined the phrase, trust the process. He says it. He uses it. And he did use it, not denying that for a second, but he didn't make it up. I've seen some memes going around of Mikel Arteta saying, with it saying, trust the process. It's like me saying I came up with the phrase, half of one, six a dozen of the, or what is it? Six of one, half a dozen of the other. That's it. Got there in the end. I didn't make it up. I might use it sometimes, but I didn't make it up. Anyway, thank you all so much for joining us. Really, really do appreciate. Don't forget to like if you're watching us on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe if you're with us on the YouTube channel. If you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, leave us a review. Check us out on Patreon, and be sure to go over and give Adam's channel a follow. It is really, really top drawer content, and I'm sure you're going to love it. Adam, thanks again. Hope to speak to you on the Chronicles of a Gooner again soon. Until the next one, take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful day.